Meghan Markle has just been officially, permanently erased from key royal records, and the absolute most terrifying part of this entire situation isn't even the erasure itself. It is the cold, calculated, and utterly ruthless way the palace executed the maneuver. Princess and explicitly confirmed the decision. Prince William personally signed off on the final order, and Prince Harry was allegedly kept completely in the dark until the ink was entirely dry. This is no longer a messy family argument playing out in the pages of international tabloids. This is the massive, thousand-year-old machinery of the British monarchy moving quietly, efficiently, and without looking back, while the people most affected by the decision were completely locked out of the room. When you understand the specific, highly classified incident that triggered this unprecedented purge, this entire saga stops looking like royal drama and starts looking like an empire officially deciding it is absolutely done negotiating with the past. You are locked into Crown Royal, the only platform breaking down the raw, unfiltered truth of the firm. Smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and let's expose exactly how the future king just slammed the heavy iron door shut forever. To truly comprehend the sheer, staggering magnitude of this decision, you have to understand the terrifyingly specific language Princess and used to confirm it. This wasn't a heavily sanitized PR statement drafted by a crisis management team meant to soften the blow for the global public. It happened during a highly restricted, fiercely private briefing strictly reserved for senior household officials, and explicitly confirmed to the room that Meghan Markle had been officially and permanently erased from the Windsor operational archive. To be absolutely clear, she isn't being erased from historical memory. What she did in the past, her wedding, her brief time as a working royal, is still documented in the history books. But she has been completely wiped from all active working royal duties, ceremonial privileges, internal palace briefings, and future protocol references. Prince William authorized what is known within the palace walls as a closing order. A closing order is not a temporary pause. It is not a cooling-off period designed to let tempers settle. It is the absolute, unyielding final instruction that ends an active royal reference for all of eternity. Once William's pen touched that paper, every single member of the royal staff was legally barred from ever treating Meghan's name as part of the monarchy's future operational plans. The long-debated era of the half-in, half-out royal has been officially, permanently executed. But this massive, historic order did not just materialize out of thin air. Buckingham Palace does not initiate complete operational purges without intense, undeniable provocation. Behind William's final, devastating signature is a highly classified, explosive protocol breach that shattered whatever microscopic trace of trust remained between the two warring sides of the family. The entire situation traces back to a deeply private, highly formal commemorative ceremony scheduled to take place at Windsor. This was a sacred, heavily guarded event specifically designed to honor the long, unbroken chain of royal service and the individuals who dedicate their lives to the crown. According to deep palace insiders who operate far away from the flashing cameras, representatives for Meghan aggressively and persistently demanded that her name be restored to the official ceremonial register for this specific event. They made this demand despite the undeniable, globally recognized fact that she is a non-working royal who wasn't even scheduled to be in the United Kingdom at the time of the ceremony. The demand alone was considered infuriatingly tone-deaf by the courtiers, but what a palace secretary discovered just hours later pushed the incredibly fragile situation far past the point of no return. While reviewing the event's logistical paperwork, an eagle-eyed palace secretary noticed a glaring discrepancy. A draft registry page, the crucial working document utilized by the staff before final sovereign approval is granted, had been secretly and deliberately altered. Meghan's royal title had been intentionally inserted right next to the names reserved exclusively for active, working royal representatives. Someone within the chain of communication had actively tried to quietly sneak her back into a highly visible, incredibly prestigious role that the palace had explicitly and legally revoked years prior. It was a completely unprecedented infiltration of palace protocol. When Princess Anne was handed that altered document, the atmosphere inside the stone walls of Windsor Castle turned to absolute ice. The Princess Royal is universally feared and deeply respected across the Commonwealth precisely because she possesses zero tolerance for entitlement, Hollywood theatrics, or emotional manipulation. She is the ultimate, uncompromising enforcer of the late Queen's standards, and reportedly stood just outside the ceremony room, holding the forged registry page tightly between her fingers, and delivered a chilling, 5-word ultimatum directly to Prince William. This cannot happen again, and intrinsically understood that if the palace allowed a single, quiet exception under the weight of emotional pressure or PR fears, the structural integrity of the entire monarchy would completely collapse. Allowing Meghan to sit on a formal registry of active service members would rewrite the very definition of royal duty right in front of the people who had sacrificed their entire lives to uphold it, and kept the altered page securely inside a sealed envelope. She didn't keep it as an act of petty, vindictive revenge. She secured it as undeniable, physical proof of a malicious breach that could never, ever be explained away by slick American public relations teams. The resulting confrontation happened behind heavily guarded, completely soundproofed closed doors at Kensington Palace. This was a space where the family could no longer hide behind careful statements, royal correspondence, or crisis management teams. The gloves were entirely off. Prince William entered the room carrying the sealed envelope, his demeanor completely unreadable. Princess and sat directly across the polished mahogany table with the terrifying, unblinking stillness of a high court judge. King Charles sat visibly trapped in the agonizing space between his profound, heartbreaking grief as a father and his inescapable, heavy duty as the reigning monarch. When Prince Harry finally arrived, expecting to walk into yet another cyclical debate about security or media strategy, he immediately realized the temperature in the room was entirely wrong. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a sentencing. William kept his voice dangerously low, entirely stripped of emotion, informing his younger brother that the monarchy could absolutely no longer preserve a role that Meghan had willfully and publicly abandoned. Harry's initial disbelief violently shifted into defensive, frantic anger. He demanded to know why he and his wife were constantly being treated like criminals by the very institution that was supposed to protect them. In response, Princess didn't argue. She didn't yell. She calmly reached across the expansive table and slid the altered registry page directly in front of him. She didn't even raise her voice above a whisper. She simply stated that the forged page sitting before him was the exact moment the final shred of trust died. The room suffocated in a heavy, punishing silence. King Charles, looking older and more exhausted than ever, asked one single, devastating question. Did Meghan authorize the insertion of her name? Harry's agonizing, prolonged silence became vastly heavier and more damning than any defensive denial could have ever been. The crushing weight of what had to happen next fell entirely on the broad shoulders of the future king. Prince William didn't sign the closing order out of blind hatred, lingering malice, or a petty desire for familial revenge. He signed it out of utter, bone-deep exhaustion and the terrifying realization that extending mercy without enforcing absolute boundaries is a fatal cancer to the institution. Before the ink was even dry on the decree, Catherine reportedly asked William the only question that actually mattered in that incredibly dark, isolating moment. Was he at peace with the decision? William quietly admitted that he never wanted to be the one to permanently close the heavy door on his only brother. But a half-open door had slowly morphed into an endless, agonizing invitation for relentless chaos, destructive media leaks, and endless emotional extortion. He had to finally accept that doing the absolute right thing for the survival of the 1,000-year-old crown meant permanently, irreversibly hurting the brother he had once sworn to protect. When William finally placed the pen down on the desk, he didn't look victorious. He didn't look relieved. He looked significantly older. In that exact moment, he had officially, painfully chosen the ruthless discipline of the institution over the bonds of family. The grieving boy who had once walked silently behind his mother's casket had finally transformed into a calculating, unyielding king in waiting. By morning, the quiet palace order became a massive, undeniable public earthquake. The internal operational archives were meticulously wiped clean. Executive briefing lines regarding the Sussexes were permanently deleted from the daily dockets. Future ceremonial plans were permanently altered to reflect the new, unchangeable reality. Meghan learned the hard way that the palace hadn't just rejected her request to return to the spotlight. They had actively rewritten her absence into constitutional permanence. Harry was forced to realize the absolute most devastating truth of all. The palace had finally learned exactly how to move the machinery of the monarchy forward without waiting for his approval, and they were absolutely no longer terrified of his or Meghan's public reaction. The agonizing era of the British monarchy bending over backwards, breaking its own ancient rules to accommodate unresolved family trauma, is entirely, permanently over. The operational record is closed. The line in the sand has been aggressively drawn, and the House of Windsor has officially, ruthlessly chosen the stability of its future over the agony of its fracture.